Some stories from history are just so packed with drama, betrayal, and heartbreak, you can hardly believe they're true. Well, her story is definitely one of them. We're talking about Mary, Queen of Scots, a woman born to be a queen who ended up losing absolutely everything. All right, let's get into this incredible story. And that really is the heart of it, isn't it? How does someone who had, by all accounts, one of the strongest claims to power in Europe, how does she end up with her head on an executioner's block in a foreign country? Well, the answer is just this gripping tale of politics, religion, and some really, really disastrous personal choices. So let's start at the very beginning. Mary's life kicks off at the absolute pinnacle of power. I mean, she was born into a world that literally promised her two different crowns. But right from the start, that promise was shadowed by some serious danger. I mean, just look at this timeline. It is an absolute whirlwind. She becomes Queen of Scotland when she's only 6 days old. For her own safety, she gets whisked off to France to grow up in their royal court. By 15, she's married to the heir, and by the next year, boom, she's Queen of France. It sounds like a fairy tale, right? But then it just shatters. Her young husband dies, and suddenly at just 18, she's a widow, and she has to go back to rule a Scotland that she barely even knows. And this, right here, is where the stage is set for the biggest rivalry of the era. On one side, you've got Mary. She's a devout Catholic, and she has a rock-solid claim to the English throne through her grandmother. Then, on the other side, there's her cousin, Elizabeth I. She's a Protestant queen, and a lot of Catholics in Europe didn't even think she was the legitimate ruler. This rivalry, it was going to define both of their lives. So Mary gets back to Scotland, but it is not the country she left as a little girl. See, while she was growing up in super Catholic France, Scotland went through the Protestant Reformation. So now you have a Catholic queen trying to rule a very, very Protestant nation. Talk about a tough gig. And here's the wild part. At first, she was actually great at it. She was careful, she was diplomatic, and she was pretty popular. It really looked like she was going to pull it off. But it wasn't the politics or the religion that ended up being her downfall. No, it was her heart. It was her choices in love that set her on a course for absolute disaster. Okay, so if you thought it was dramatic before, this is where things go from a political chess match to a full-blown, scandalous thriller. And it all comes down to the men she chose to marry. So in comes husband number 2, her cousin, Lord Darnley. And yeah, he was handsome, but he was also a total train wreck. Just arrogant, incredibly jealous, and he wanted power more than anything. Their marriage pretty quickly turned into a complete nightmare. And then things get really dark. In a fit of pure, jealous rage, Darnley and some other nobles storm into Mary's private chambers and murder her close friend and secretary, David Rizzio. They stab him over 50 times right in front of her. And she was pregnant at the time. I mean, can you even imagine? That one act of brutality destroyed any shred of trust or love she had for her husband. And believe it or not, less than a year later, the story gets even crazier. The house where Darnley is staying just explodes in the middle of the night. His body is found in the garden. So the big question is, who did it? Well, suspicion almost immediately falls on one of the most powerful and ruthless men in Scotland, the Earl of Bothwell. And this is the decision that just seals her fate. Only 3 months after her husband was murdered, Mary marries the #1 suspect. Now, people still argue about it. Was she in on it, or was she forced into it by Bothwell? But honestly, for the people of Scotland, it didn't even matter. This was just too much. It was the final straw. The fallout was, well, it was immediate, and it was brutal. A rebellion explodes across the country. Mary gets captured and locked away in a castle on an island. And there, they force her to give up her crown to her own baby son, James. In just a couple of years, she went from this popular, promising queen to a prisoner who'd lost everything. So Mary pulls off this daring escape from the castle, but her army gets defeated. She has nowhere left to go in Scotland, so she makes this huge, desperate gamble. She flees south to England and asks her cousin, Queen Elizabeth, for help. And this drops a massive, massive problem right in Queen Elizabeth's lap. And this right here is the key to understanding Elizabeth's problem. For all the Catholics in England, Mary wasn't just some refugee. She was their real queen, a living, breathing Catholic alternative to their Protestant monarch.
Letting her just wander around England freely? No way. It was way too dangerous.
So what does Elizabeth do? Instead of helping her, she locks her up. And we're not talking for a short time. Mary would spend the next 19 years as a royal prisoner, shuffled from one castle to another, a queen without a kingdom. 19 years.
For almost 2 decades, Mary remained this symbol, this magnet for anyone who wanted to overthrow Elizabeth. But it was one final conspiracy that was going to bring it all crashing down and give Elizabeth the reason she needed to end this once and for all. It was called the Babington Plot. The plan was simple: assassinate Queen Elizabeth, put Mary on the throne. But Elizabeth's spy master was brilliant. He intercepted coded letters going back and forth between Mary and the plotters. And when they cracked the code, they found it. Undeniable proof that Mary knew about and approved of the assassination plot. Elizabeth finally had her smoking gun.
So Mary was put on trial. I mean, think about that. A queen on trial for treason in another queen's country. It was completely unheard of. But the verdict, well, that was never really in doubt, was it? She was found guilty and sentenced to death. But on the day of her execution, Mary was anything but defeated. She walked out with this incredible dignity. And when she took off her black outer cloak, she revealed a bright crimson dress underneath, the color of a Catholic martyr. It was her last powerful, defiant statement to the world. The execution itself, it was just awful. It was botched. It took the executioner 3 swings of the axe to sever her head. And just like that, with that gruesome final act, the tragic life of Mary, Queen of Scots, was over. But, and this is a huge but, her death is not where the story ends. In fact, this is where you find the most unbelievable twist of all. Because in losing her own life, Mary ultimately got the victory she had been fighting for all along. So check this out. Queen Elizabeth I, the Virgin Queen, dies with no children, no heir. So who's the next in line with the strongest claim? None other than Mary's son, James VI of Scotland. He travels down to London, becomes King James I of England, and for the very first time, he unites the crowns of England and Scotland. Mary's own son won the prize. Which leaves us with this one big question, right? In the end, who really won? Elizabeth kept her crown and ruled successfully for decades. But Mary, the queen who failed, who was imprisoned and executed, her son inherited everything. It really makes you think about what victory actually means.